Are you ready to really kind of like dive into some big questions about the future?
Always ready for those. Hit me.
Okay, so today we're really diving deep into Yuval Noah Harari's 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And
Oh, excellent.
yeah, have you had a chance to
I have. I've read it a couple of times, actually.
Oh,
It's one of those books that you can revisit again and again and still find something new in it
yeah,
every time. It's just so relevant.
I think so too. And it's just packed with ideas, you know?
Yeah.
We're talking AI, the power of data, the relevance of religion in this whole tech crazy world. It's
It's a lot to unpack.
yeah, it's a lot, but it's fascinating stuff.
It is. And what I think makes Harari's work so compelling is that he doesn't just, kind of lay out these huge challenges like, here they are,
Yeah.
here, look at that. He actually gives us a framework for understanding them.
Okay.
It's like he's shining a light, on these potential paths and the pitfalls, too, of where we might be headed.
Okay, so you're saying it's less like a roadmap and more like a choose-your-own-adventure guide to the 21st century.
Exactly. And
My best.
And one of the first things he kind of points out is that a lot of the old stories that we've relied on for so long, these grand narratives like liberalism or communism,
Right.
they're starting to kind of falter.
Yeah.
He calls it this disillusionment with grand narratives.
And it's true. You see this everywhere. I mean, think about like the rise of figures like Trump, the Brexit vote, all of this. It represents this like deep yearning for simpler times, right? This rejection of globalism and the complexities of, just the modern world.
And this disillusionment, it's like it creates this vacuum, this void
Yeah.
that's easily filled with these simplistic solutions.
Right.
Even if those solutions are ultimately illusions.
Yeah.
And Harari suggests that this is actually part of the reason why we're seeing this resurgence of nationalism.
Yeah.
Even when global cooperation is more vital than ever.
It's almost like we're hardwired to seek belonging in these kind of tribal identities, even when they're at odds with the challenges of a globalized world.
Yeah,
It's like we're drawn to this comfort of a familiar story,
absolutely.
even if it's not the most helpful story anymore.
Precisely. And what happens when those familiar stories,
Right.
they no longer provide that sense of security or purpose?
Yeah.
That's where his exploration of work, or rather the potential lack of it,
Okay.
becomes really unsettling.
This is the part that like really made me think.
Yeah.
He's suggesting that AI and biotech can make human labor obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's
Big wake-up call right there.
talk about a wake-up call, right? So if machines can do our jobs better and faster,
Yeah.
what does that mean for us?
Well, it's not just about like losing your job to a robot,
Right.
although that's definitely part of it.
Right.
It's about this possibility of becoming irrelevant
Okay.
in a data-driven economy.
Okay, so you're saying it's bigger than just, oh no, a robot took my job.
Right. It's like,
It's about humans potentially becoming what, less valuable, less essential.
in a way, yes. And he uses this example of like a bank loan officer
Okay.
and how their intuition about whether or not somebody's trustworthy might be completely outdone by an AI analyzing micro-expressions and data points that humans don't even register.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's amazing.
It is.
But it's also kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
So we're talking about understanding human behavior on a whole other level, but with these potentially huge implications for things like employment, social structures,
Absolutely. And it leads directly to another huge point that Harari raises, which is liberty.
Okay.
He argues that big data, while holding immense potential,
Yeah.
also risks creating these digital dictatorships
Okay.
that are more subtle and pervasive than any totalitarian regime in history.
Digital dictatorship. So
Yeah.
not so much like Orwell's 1984 with the overt surveillance, but more like Huxley's Brave New World, where the control comes from manipulating our desires.
Bingo, you got it.
Oh.
Think about it for a second. We already outsource our navigation skills to GPS,
Sure.
our memories to our smartphones.
Yeah.
What happens when we outsource our decision-making
Oh, wow.
to algorithms, but know our habits, our preferences, even our unconscious biases better than we know ourselves?
Oh, man. It's almost like we're handing over the steering wheel of our lives, like piece by piece,
Yeah.
without really fully grasping what the consequences could be.
And that's the danger that he's highlighting.
Right.
It's not just about data privacy, although that's hugely important.
Yeah.
It's about the potential for these technologies to basically shape our thoughts,
Right.
our beliefs, our behaviors in ways that we might not even be aware of.
It's a bit like those targeted ads that
Sure.
seem to know exactly what you're thinking about buying, but on a much grander and more unsettling scale.
Exactly.
Right.
And if we're not careful, this whole data-driven world
Yeah.
could create this new kind of feudalism.
Okay, now that's a chilling thought.
Yeah, it is.
But even if we manage to kind of address these challenges,
Right.
there's still this fundamental question of meaning, right?
Always.
If the old stories are crumbling,
Yeah.
and our own minds might be susceptible to manipulation,
Right.
where do we find a sense of purpose?
Well, that's where I think Harari's insights into human psychology and our need for connection
Okay.
become really crucial.
So even in this tech-driven future, we're still ultimately social creatures looking for meaning and belonging.
Absolutely we are.
Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that.
So, we're talking about this idea of connection and purpose, and it kind of brings us to his thoughts on community.
Okay.
Um,
So does he see online communities as a viable alternative to real-world interaction? Because
Yeah.
let's face it,
Yeah.
we're spending more and more time in the digital space these days.
we are.
Uh,
It's interesting, he doesn't really see it as this either
Right.
situation,
Right.
while he totally acknowledges the power of online platforms.
Yeah.
To connect people across the globe,
Yeah.
to kind of foster this sense of belonging.
Sure.
He also cautions against viewing them as a replacement for real-world connections.
Right. So it's not about abandoning the digital world, but about finding that balance.
Finding that balance, exactly.
Okay.
And he really emphasizes the importance of shared experiences, right? Rituals as a sense of belonging that's rooted in the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
He argues that these tangible connections are really essential
Yeah.
for building trust, empathy, a sense of community that kind of goes beyond just, liking somebody's post.
Right. And when you think about it, there's a big difference between liking someone's post on social media
Huge difference.
and actually sharing a meal with them,
Exactly.
laughing together,
Yeah.
experiencing things side by side.
Precisely those face-to-face interactions, those shared moments of joy and sorrow, they create a depth of connection that's really hard to replicate in the digital sphere.
For sure. It makes you wonder, though, if those lines between the physical and digital will continue to blur.
It does.
I mean, you think about virtual reality.
Right.
What happens when we can create these hyper-realistic experiences that mimic those real-world interactions?
Yeah.
Does that change things?
And that's something that Harari kind of grapples with too in the book.
Okay.
He acknowledges that technology will continue to reshape our understanding of community,
Yeah.
but he emphasizes the importance of being mindful
Okay.
about how we use these tools.
So it's we have all this potential, right, to connect and build these meaningful relationships,
Yeah,
but we also have to be really intentional about it.
we do.
It takes effort
It does.
to cultivate those real connections, whether it's online or offline.
It really does. And it's about recognizing that technology, it can both amplify and diminish
Right.
our capacity for connection.
Sure.
It can bring us closer together, but it can also create distance and isolation
Yeah.
if we're not careful.
Right. So we've got this potential future where humans might not have to work.
Okay.
We're surrounded by technology that could either empower us or control us.
Right.
And we're trying to find meaning and connection in this world that's just increasingly complex.
Yep.
That's a lot.
It is. It's a lot to wrap our heads around.
Yeah.
And this is where I think Harari's insights into religion
Okay.
become particularly relevant.
Religion.
Okay.
Okay, I have to admit, that's not the first thing that comes to mind when I think about AI
Right.
and digital dictatorship.
It's not the usual suspect.
Right, exactly. But I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So he makes this really fascinating distinction between the technical aspects of religion
Okay.
and the identity aspects of religion.
Okay.
He's arguing that while traditional faiths, they might not have all the answers to these technical challenges like climate change or the rise of AI.
Right.
They remain deeply relevant
Okay.
to questions of identity, purpose, and belonging.
So even in this world that's, dominated by science and technology,
Yeah,
religion still speaks to something fundamental
it does.
in the human experience.
It does.
Yeah.
Religions provide this framework for understanding our place in the universe a set of moral guidelines,
Yeah.
a sense of community.
It's like a story that gives people a sense of purpose and belonging, even in the face of all this uncertainty.
Exactly. And in a world where those traditional narratives are constantly being challenged,
Right.
it's not surprising that people are turning to religion to look for those answers.
Sure, but what about the flip side of that?
Right.
What about the potential for religion to fuel conflict and division, especially as these issues of identity become, increasingly intertwined with political ideologies?
Well, and that's definitely a possibility, and he acknowledges that religion can be a source of both unity and division.
Right.
And he argues that we really need to find ways to kind of engage with these religious beliefs constructively,
Okay.
recognizing the power of them, but also guarding against dogma and intolerance.
Which is a delicate balance, for sure.
It is a delicate dance.
It is. So we've got religion, we've got technology, and then there's this whole other question of truth
Right.
in the age of fake news and information overload.
Yeah.
It's like everyone has their own version of reality these days.
Well, this is where his whole concept of the post-truth world comes into play.
Right.
And he really argues that it's becoming harder and harder
Yeah.
to sort out, what's fact, what's fiction.
It's tough to tell sometimes.
It is.
Yeah.
And he says that this erosion of trust
Yeah.
in a shared reality poses this really serious threat to our collective future.
It's like that old saying, a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes.
Right. Exactly.
And it's more relevant than ever.
It is.
In the age of social media.
It really is.
So how do we combat this? How do
Yeah.
we find solid ground
Yeah.
when everything seems up for debate?
Well, Harari suggests that one way to kind of cut through the noise is to focus on suffering.
Okay.
He calls it the most real thing in the world because it's this universal language
Right.
that transcends dogma ideology, even language itself.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Suffering is something that we can all relate to
Right.
on such a fundamental level, regardless of our beliefs or backgrounds.
Exactly.
But how do we go from recognizing suffering to actually building a better future?
Right. How do we take that recognition and turn it into something positive?
Yeah.
Well, this is where his emphasis on secularism comes in.
Okay.
But he defines it in a way that might surprise you.
Oh, how so?
So for Harari, secularism isn't about rejecting religion outright.
Oh, yeah.
It's about this commitment to truth-seeking doubt and personal responsibility.
Interesting.
It's about being willing to question your own beliefs, to be open to evidence that challenges your worldview, and to prioritize compassion and empathy over dogma.
So it's more about a way of thinking,
It is.
a commitment to critical thinking and ethical decision-making regardless of your religious belief.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's about recognizing the importance of humility. In a world that's just overflowing with information.
Humility.
Humility.
Yeah.
He talks about this knowledge illusion,
Okay.
this tendency we all have to overestimate our own knowledge.
Right.
Especially in a world where we're just constantly bombarded with information.
Right, like we were saying earlier.
Exactly. We might think we know more than we do, and that can lead to all sorts of problems.
It's like we mistake access to information
Right.
for actual understanding.
100%.
So how do we break free from that illusion?
Well, it starts with acknowledging the limits of our own knowledge,
Okay.
being open to different perspectives,
Right.
and embracing curiosity of a lifelong pursuit.
I like that.
Right. Recognizing that there's always more to learn,
Right.
and that the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know.
It's a humbling thought,
It is.
but also incredibly liberating.
It is. But if we're constantly questioning and doubting,
Right.
how do we ever make decisions?
Right, exactly.
How do we know what to believe, what path to take?
It's like you're paralyzed by the possibilities.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance. And he says that while doubt is essential for critical thinking, it shouldn't paralyze us.
Right.
He encourages us to develop what he calls a flexible identity,
Okay.
one that's open to change and growth,
Okay.
but still rooted in this core set of values.
Values like compassion, empathy, a commitment to truth.
Precisely. And this leads us right back to his thoughts on finding meaning in a world where the old stories are crumbling.
Right.
He's basically saying we don't need this perfect narrative
Okay.
or this grand universal truth
Right.
to find purpose and direction in our lives.
So what's the alternative? If we're not searching for that one big story to explain it all, what are we striving for?
Well, he suggests that meaning it often emerges from the stories that we choose to create with our own lives.
Okay.
The values that we embody, the impact that we have on the world around us.
So it's less about finding the quote-unquote right story and more about choosing a story that resonates with our values.
Exactly.
And kind of guides our actions in a positive direction.
100%. And it's about recognizing that our stories are always evolving.
Sure.
We're constantly learning, growing, adapting to new experiences.
It's like we're all authors of our own lives.
We are.
And we have the power to revise and rewrite our stories as we go.
Yeah.
Which is kind of daunting when you think about it.
It can be a little overwhelming.
Because it's like, how do I even begin to craft this narrative that feels both authentic and meaningful, especially in a world that often just feels so chaotic and unpredictable?
It's true. Well, this is where his insights on the power of the mind really come in.
Okay.
He argues that while we may not be able to control everything that happens to us, we can learn to control our responses to those events.
I see where you're going with this.
And that's where true freedom lies.
So you're saying that finding meaning and navigating this whole crazy, complex world starts with understanding and kind of like mastering our own minds.
In a way, yeah, he argues that one of the greatest sources of suffering isn't out there in the world.
Right.
You know, it's not all these external things.
Right.
It's actually within the patterns of our own minds.
Right.
We get caught in these like negative thought loops.
Right.
We cling to things we can't control, and we just let like fear and anxiety kind of dictate our choices.
It's so true. It's like our minds can be our own worst enemies sometimes.
Exactly. But the good news is we're not powerless.
Okay.
And he points to practices like meditation as a way to kind of train the mind to become more aware of those thoughts and emotions without judgment. And to cultivate a greater sense of like inner peace and clarity.
So it's about cultivating a sense of mindfulness, like being present in the moment instead of constantly like dwelling on the past or, you know, being anxious about the future.
Yes, and it's about recognizing that our thoughts are not facts. Just because we think something doesn't mean it's true.
That is such an important distinction.
It is.
Because we get so caught up in our own heads that like we forget to question our own thoughts. We take them as gospel. When really they're just these like fleeting thoughts, you know?
Exactly. And once we start to recognize that we have a choice in how we respond to our thoughts, then it opens up this whole new realm of possibility.
So it's not about silencing your thoughts or pretending to be happy all the time.
No.
But it's about learning to observe them with a sense of detachment and then choosing how you want to engage with them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this ability to choose our responses. To act from a place of awareness rather than just kind of like knee-jerk reacting to everything. That's essential for navigating the challenges that we're facing in the 21st century.
Because if you're constantly reacting to every little thing that comes your way, you're basically giving away your power.
Exactly. You're at the mercy of your emotions, your circumstances, all of that. But when you develop that inner resilience, that ability to pause, reflect, and then choose how you're going to respond, you become so much more adaptable. More capable of kind of rolling with the punches and handling whatever life throws at you.
So to bring this all back to the idea of meaning,
yes,
Harari is suggesting that it's not about finding the perfect answer or achieving some like big, grand goal, but about cultivating a certain way of being in the world.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, it's about embracing that curiosity, cultivating compassion, and choosing to act in ways that align with your values. Even when things are tough.
Even when things are tough. And maybe by focusing on cultivating our own inner peace and wisdom, we can kind of like play a small part in creating a more peaceful and compassionate world.
I think Harari would agree with that.
Yeah. Wow, this deep dive has been amazing.
It has.
We've covered so much.
We have.
We've talked about the potential pitfalls of technology, the enduring power of religion, the importance of community. This whole search for meaning and the power of the mind.
It's all connected, right?
It is. It's all connected, and I think that's what makes Harari's work so relevant.
Absolutely.
Even if it can be a little unsettling.
A little bit, yeah.
Because he's not giving us the easy answers.
He's not.
But he is giving us the tools to ask better questions.
Yes, and that's so important.
It really is. And on that note, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into 21 lessons for the 21st century.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been so thought-provoking.
It has.
And for everyone listening out there, we hope this has kind of like sparked your curiosity.
Yes.
Inspired you to explore these ideas a little bit further.
There's so much there.
Because the future isn't something that just happens to us.
True.
It's something that we create together through the choices that we make every single day.
Beautifully said.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep choosing wisely.